Alright guys, so for today's video we are making the witch hat on Halloween Deku. And I'm going to start out with the materials that we'll need. So, I'll put a picture up in the corner of what we're making so as I reference stuff y'all don't have to look back on it. We will need sewing shears, craft scissors, something to draw your pattern on. For me, I'm going to use this craft paper roll from Dollar Tree that I've got. It's a really nice 30-inch by 15 feet. I haven't used this before. I usually use a slightly more expensive roll from Michael's, but we're going to test it out today. Something to draw on your fabric with. Something to sketch out your pattern with. For me, this is the Soline chalk pencil, which I like. If this doesn't work on the fabric I've got, I'll also try some Tailor's chalk. Purple thread. This doesn't quite match my fabric, but it's the only purple thread I've got, and I wasn't wanting to buy a different set. This is number 3390 from Coats & Clark's Dual Duty XP line. Your purple fabric, mine's got bits of fabric all over it. I'll have to hit it with a lint roller. I think that you could use any purple fabric, really. It's whatever feels good to you. I picked up this felt at a local thrift store, so I'm going to use it. It's a nice dark purple. Not quite the same shade as my thread, but close. And this is actually like a felt type material. Next up, you'll want whatever is going to be the orange ribbon. For me, it's going to be more of this scrap fabric that's left over from a prior cosplay that I also used for the patches on the cloak. Next, you're going to need something to draw the black line on the ribbon. You can either use a smaller piece of black ribbon, fabric paint, whatever. I am currently undecided on how I'm going to do that, which is why I don't have anything to show. Last but not least, there is a black bat shape on the hat, and I'm going to use this scrap EVA foam to make it. I think this is, it's not 2mm. Maybe it's 2mm? I don't know. But I'll be using it. It's thin enough that it's going to be fine, and it's really the perfect size for the bat shape, so woo. Those are all the materials. I forgot, you're going to want a ruler or a compass or a string, whatever you're going to use to measure out the size of your hat. So you can see that there's an attempted pattern already drawn. Ignore that. I decided that was too big. What I decided I wanted was a 3-inch radius for the brim and a 1-inch radius for the inner circle piece. So that's what I ended up doing. I used my little circle maker tool to just sketch out those measurements. While I cut it out on screen, I'm going to talk a little bit more about measurements. Now, your measurement choices will change depending on how big your head is and how big you want the hat to be in proportion to like the rest of the costume. I might even end up cutting out a little bit more of the inner circle because I don't know that it's big enough for the size that I want the hat to be. We will see. But overall, it'll just depend on the size that you want it to be. All up to personal preference. If I do make the circle bigger, I will let you guys know on screen. But okay, for this cutting right here, I personally recommend cutting it out when it's folded in half because it allows you to cut it out more smoothly and easily. So fair warning, the cone portion takes a lot more math than the brim. You actually have to use a formula, which I don't appreciate, and I'm sure none of you will, but it is what it is. So, to start off with, you're going to need your inner radius, which is the number that you use to make the inside hole of your brim. For me, that number was going to be 1, but I actually ended up doing 1.5. So that's going to be 1.5, and then you're going to want to square it and that'll get you 2.25 for me at least. And then you're going to add that to the height that you want your cap to be. I want mine to be 4.5 inches. So you square 4.5, you're gonna get 20.25, you're gonna add your 2.25 from before, you're gonna get 22.5, and then you're going to take that lovely number and you're going to find the square root of it to get the height that your cap is actually going to need to be. And for me, that is 4.74. And now I'm going to show you what you do with that number to get your cone shape. Woo. Alright, so I was just talking about the math and talking about the number that I specifically got, which was 4.74. And I'm just going to go ahead and round that up to 4.8, just for the ease of using it on my ruler. We're going to go ahead and draw it out. And then what you do is you go to this point and you draw it out again. From this anchor point, and you're gonna do this until you get about a third of a circle shape. Now I'm just gonna speed up the rest of me drawing out the slant height, so that y'all don't have to sit here for the amount of time that it took me to draw that out. And there we are, we're done. Something along this shape. And now what you're going to want is to grab this. Now to figure out how long this should be, you're going to need to find the circumference of this piece. Now for me, my radius was 1.5, if you all remember. So you're going to take your radius squared, which was 2.25, and you're going to times that by pi. So for me, that would be 7 inches. So you're going to want to about this. Then you're going to want to just sketch it all out. Make sure that you connect each of the lines in a arc. Like so. Now, next up, I realized I needed to add some seam allowance to the bottom, so that's what I do. I do about 1/2 inch. Then you just cut it all out. Which brings us to the next portion, which is yet again more cutting. So you're going to trace out your pattern with whatever marking tool you have, and then you're just going to cut it out. Make sure you use your sewing shears, and yeah. Sewing time. So you're going to want to make sure to pin or clip your 2 edges, and then I just straight stitch on my 1/2 inch of seam allowance, making sure to reverse at the beginning of end of the stitch to secure it. And then what you're going to do after that is trim off the excess seam allowance at the top where the point of your cone is going to be, and then turn it inside out and make sure to just fully poke it all out. There you go. Just wanted to show you guys that when I attached the brim, there was excess to the brim. So I took my pin, marked where it needs to be sewn up, and that's what I ended up doing. just a very simple straight stitch, and then you cut off the seam allowance. Just wanted to show you guys as I pin and attach the brim to the cone, just so you guys get an idea of what it should look like. And there you go. Momentary pause to show you the circus. I'm trying to sew over here, and we've got Mr. Kitty 1 and 2 having battle royales and opening my door, the pug trying to chase them up and down the hallway, and it's just making a racket, which is why most of today's video has been a voiceover. You have two choices here. You can hand sew it, or you can sew it with your machine, if your machine will let you fit it. Doing it with the machine was a little fiddly. It was very hard to fit all of this over in there. It might have been easier to hand sew it, but I did not, because I'm stubborn. So yeah, it's just the same straight stitch we've done for everything else on this hat. And then here's what it looks like all put together. Woo! Now, next thing you're going to need is a hand sewing needle and some of your purple thread, because we're going to try and pinch and shape the top of the hat to get the shape from the photo. And I'm just going to pinch it to decide where I'm sewing, and then you're going to sew the piece in. I'm going to do it twice just to extra secure it, and then I'm going to knot it up to make sure it doesn't leave that position, and then the hat is done except for all the accessories, so woo. So next up, it is time to work on the orange ribbon. So I measure the cone and I get 9 inches, so good info to have. Now, I mentioned earlier that I'd be using the orange fabric. I had to get ribbon instead because the orange fabric didn't work, and these are the ribbons I got. So there you go, if you have to look for these exact ones. Now, I'm going to cut it to 10 inches for seam allowance for both the orange and the black ribbon. And then what I'm going to do is I'm not going to sew them together. I'm actually going to use some of my Heat and Bond Light. And I'm just going to do that off screen here. And this is what it looks like. It attached really well. And now I'm just going to straight stitch the ends like so, making sure to reverse at the beginning and end of the stitch. Now you're going to want to cut off your excess seam allowance there, and then just put your ribbon on. Now you do have choices. You can attach your ribbon somehow. You can do little stitches at the bottom or whatever you can do. Okay, and now for the bat. I had this little bat clothespin from the Dollar Tree, and I used it to draw out my base shape. And then I actually edit it to my preferences, as you can see here. And I only draw half of it, so I just fold the paper in half when it comes to cutting out my pattern. Like so. I take a white pen to shape out the pattern, and then a box cutter and a craft knife to cut out the bat shape from the foam. Now, real quick, I'm going to talk to you about how you're going to attach it. You can super glue it to the ribbon, you can hot glue it to the ribbon, fabric glue it to the ribbon, whatever you want to do. Now, for the actual attaching the hat to the hood, we're going to use sew-on snaps, 2 each, and just hand sew them on. I'm going to do that off screen because it's a little difficult to get it on camera. And here's the final hat. It's done. It's all put together. I think it looks real cute. There's the sew-on snaps.